In a further way that you can prove that the impossible can seem possible, the Brisbane Lions are your 2024 AFL Premiers, and a massive congratulations to them and to their fans. And this is going to be the Brisbane Love Fest, this video, because that second quarter, holy moly, 7 goals they piled on. And I want to talk about the way they were able to break the game open, because yes, they did win the second half by 14 points, but they were only up by 8 at quarter time, and it became an impossible mountain to climb at 46 at the half. So that is going to be the topic of this video. That second quarter, what they did right, what Sydney did wrong, but it is going to be about the Premiers, the winners, because from what I've seen so far, and especially the 2-hour drive home after watching the grand final at my missus's brother's joint, was social media, mainstream media, footy fans themselves seemed to be giving Sydney more crap than Brisbane credit. So let's give them the credit they deserve, do they? And let's discuss how Brisbane sank the Swans in that second quarter. And there's actually no intro today because I keep having problems with copyright, so we're just going to get straight into it. It may be better without an intro, who knows? So according to my count, because at the time of recording, I've just watched that second quarter again, Brisbane had 8 clearances to Sydney's 3. They definitely won the inside 50 count by 10 and took the genuine piss. And Mark's inside 50 was 8-1. Hayden McLean being the only Sydney player to take a mark inside 50 in that second quarter. But it wasn't always Brisbane's way. Sydney had 5 of the first 7 inside 50s for the quarter, and Brisbane had 11 of the next 12. Extraordinary. But it was interesting because Brisbane was so good with and without the ball, whereas we've seen some grand finals. I take Brisbane v Collingwood the previous year, for example. Both teams were relatively good with the ball, and where some criticism came about at the end of that grand final was Brisbane, because they lost a little bit more than Collingwood, but without the ball, there were some structural things that fell apart. For example, the redemption arc of Brandon Starcevic was unbelievable, considering he was pretty poor last year versus, in my opinion, the most underrated player on the ground. I understand that he didn't get a Norm Smith medal vote. In my opinion, I don't know whether I could have given him one in a 3-2-1 system, but my God, he was outstanding. But what was so interesting with Brisbane is that they set up behind the ball really well. They did everything right. Everything. And it's amazing because you go, you can't really call it perfection, can you? I think you can, considering that the only goal Sydney kicked in that quarter came from a bonkers 50-metre penalty against Zorko, and considering that Blakey and I think Will Hayward did exactly the same thing as Zorko did and were allowed to move back, you don't have to be dead to be stiff, so credit where it's due. But it all started with the first goal, which was Kai Loman's, where Zach Bailey was able to nudge Dane Rampy under the ball, get some space, found Loman, who just went bang from about 30 on the boundary, and he was away. That first half by Kai Loman, who looks everything like you'd want a Gold Coast Sun to look like, but a Brisbane immortal now because he's now a premiership player. Pretty fantastic stuff. Kicked his third, he was away, and so were Brisbane. I do want to say as well that outside of that 50-metre penalty, I thought the game was umpired pretty well, because live watching it with other people, they were not noticeable at all. Oh, but it was a blowout, Daz. That first quarter wasn't even umpired that badly. So credit to them. Best in the business. Now, can we have every game umpired like that? Probably not. But more games umpired like that? Pretty freaking pleased, because at half-time, there were only 17 free kicks given out. I can live with that. Another part of Sydney's game that kind of blew my mind a little bit was just how bad their tall defenders were. Now, Brisbane had some really good kicks inside 50, and I'll talk about those in a moment, but they looked all at sea. Nick Blakey was not allowed to peel off. Calamarchi kept him very accountable and made him pay with 2 goals in that second quarter. But Logan Morris and Darcy Fort taking contested marks, and let's be honest, they should have converted. Brisbane at one stage, I think, were 2 goals 6 from set shot goal kicking in that second quarter. Joe Danaher should have kicked a goal, fluffed it on the goal line. That happens. He made up for it a little bit later on. But this lead could have been so much bigger. I think, genuinely, this could have been 70 points at halftime. That's how good they were. Logan Morris intercepting the return ball. I think Matty Roberts was the guy who kicked it, intercepted it, found Kyle Oman, who again couldn't convert. But at that point in time, Brisbane's defensive wall was really troubling Sydney. They were not able to get easy ball out of their defensive half. But what Brisbane were able to do was to hit up one kick in the corridor, even if it was a sideways ball, and go. The breakdown of Sydney's structure from the corridor outward was astounding. But Joe kicked his goal after, let's be honest, Kyle Oman took a mark, but it wasn't paid. Charlie Cameron's brilliant kick inside 50. Not a whole lot you can do there as a Sydney defender. Joe puts it through, the easiest shot he'd probably had, or the second easiest shot, I should say, behind the one on the goal line after Eric Hipwood's, which, again, Eric should have kicked that, and then he kicked the bonkers one, which I'll talk about in a second, but the easy shot by Eric, the ball bounced on its point. Poor Tommy McCartan. Joe just couldn't get boot to ball. I think he kicked one goal for Joe. Could have easily kicked 6 or 7 and had a Norm kind of day. It was a perfect Joe day, you could say. He was still very good, don't get me wrong. But he converted the set shot, and the panic button was being pushed in a significant way. Now, I don't know if this would have happened if Oscar McInerney would have played, and I do feel for Oscar in a massive way, don't get me wrong, but Joe's kicked that goal, gone into the ruck contest, palmed Brodie Grundy out of the way, and it's really interesting to me now that Brodie Grundy's lost 2 ruck battles against 2 former Geelong second ruckmen in a grand final. That's weird. Darcy Fort and Nathan Vardy. Like, that's strange, right? We all acknowledge that. Anyway, Danaher just gets Grundy out of the way, kicks it inside 50. Calamar Mr. Accountable, takes the mark, goes back. Thank you very much. And that panic button was thrown out the window, let alone getting pushed. Archie's mark there was Brisbane's 11th inside 50 for the half at that point to Sydney's 1. That's nuts. Sydney would only take 2 for the first half with the aforementioned Hayden McLean mark, but Brodie Grundy took a contested mark on the halfback flank. Sydney delivered the ball to half forward. Brandon Starcevich took the mark. And this is one of those moments where you could just tell how good Brandon was on the day because he bit off the corridor ball. He actually went a little bit backwards. So he kind of went from wing halfback to a true centre halfback position. So he kind of took it on the 45, both behind him and direction and angle-wise, I should say. And the kick didn't come off. And Sydney had a 2-on-1 and were going to walk into an uncontested goal until there was pressure from behind, ball spilled and got to half forward. Who was the Brisbane player that applied that pressure? Brandon Starcevich. And that moment summed up Brisbane's effort, I honestly think better than anything else could at that point. Nothing showed Brisbane's on-ball, off-ball ability better than when Will Ashcroft, who, let's be honest, should have kicked the goal, but the ball landed about 10 metres short. So with the ball, their ability to find corridor Brisbane, Ashcroft had it 40 out from goal, round the body, didn't make the distance. Naughty Will, but I think we'll forgive him based on the way he played. And then Blakey gets it, a little bit of pressure. The wall was set up beautifully. Jared Berry, another one who had a nightmare last year, and I thought was very good. No Brisbane players were bad. Let's be honest. They were all good to elite. Right, if you were doing a tier system, that might be an idea. No Brisbane players would be in the poor or the bad tier. Like, genuinely not. Anywho, what was amazing to me is that Berry went back, kicked it, and again, Starcevich, Berry, 2 Brisbane players who were really poor last year, having big moments to put the game away was really special. No demons here. Not for Brisbane, anyway. And then Hipwood kicks that goal. And I'm not saying that in a passing way. I still don't know how that went through, for crying out loud. The height he was able to get on that kick was as important as the direction, by the way, as the ball holding up allowed it to stay straight in flight. Unbelievable goal. The Aka celebration was pretty good. I don't mind it, to be honest. When you're taking the piss as much as Brisbane were, celebrate how you like. And let's be honest, anyone out there that's a Hawthorn fan that didn't like that. Hypocrite. Right, so as long as we can get that out of the way. I thought it was pretty cool. I gotta be honest, I didn't actually know what he was doing when he did it. And then they showed the comparison and it clicked for me. So I thought that was pretty cool though. I'm not gonna lie. Luke Hodge called it the Hail Mary. That's a bit what it was. And everything was coming off for them. But I also don't want to make it seem like Eric fluked it either. Pure contact. He settled himself after coming on his non-preferred side. I think it was Dane Rampy who he sold some candy to. He took 2 settling steps. So everything he could have done from an adrenaline point of view was settled beautifully. And doing those little things produces good results. That's what the kick did. And then the next kick inside 50 was clinical. Neil out of the middle. Jimmy Rowbottom was caught way too far behind him. Hit up Logan Morris, 55 out from goal. And then Brisbane's philosophy of kicking inside 50 was never going to be more on show than right now. Because if anyone is going to have a panicked, uncontested moment, it's the 19-year-old draftee. And he didn't. And it was actually his second kick inside 50 for the quarter, both of which found a target. And what was amazing, the first kick to Lohman was, look, an uncontested mark. So you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, you should make that kick. But what was so interesting about his kick to Archie was, number one, Nick Blakey was heavily exposed as a one-on-one defender. But what was so interesting about it is that Brisbane, as much as possible, were kicking to foreheads, not the scalp. Why is that? Oh, sorry, the top of the head. Why is that important? Very simply, you can't have a third man up if the ball's delivered here. And even though Blakey was the one engaging with Archie, if every other Brisbane player is engaging with their opponent, then no one's going to be able to come across. You know, whether that's a Matty Roberts that could come across, any Dane Rampy, any other Swans defender. No one could come across. And then if Blakey's not a good one-on-one defender, which after Saturday we can conclusively say that's not his skill set, Callum Archie with the form that he'd shown in the final series, that was a piece of cake. Took the mark, kicked the goal, and every single one of Sydney's deficiencies were on show. And the only people at that point that thought the game would still be relatively close was every neutral fan who didn't want it to be a blowout. But you just knew that 5 minutes into the third quarter, if Brisbane was settled, it was over. The coaching performance Chris Fagan was able to put on, the lack of quality from a lot of Sydney's players was astounding. But I'm not done giving Sydney some crap here. So, kick out. 2 minutes 20 left. It's 40 points the margin, which is still a lot, I know. But Zorko's got the ball. And and I'd love to be able to show you this, but the AFL copyright everything. I won't call them what I want to there, but come on, just let us... It's just footage. Anywho. And you think to yourself, plug the holes. Guard the space. Go with your man. 2 minutes 20. Do not let this get worse. And Zorko just walks out of the square and hits a 50-metre bullet to an uncontested Jasper Fletcher. And you throw your hands up and you go, for crying out loud. Now, let's give the Swans 0.1% of credit here. It took Fletcher a while to find a target. Callum Archie led up at the ball. Really good hands. That's fine. 20 seconds later, the ball's at half forward. And Josh Dunkley makes an insanely good effort. To take on Robbie Fox, I think it was at that point. Now, when there's a one-on-one, what's really interesting to me is who's next. Who's next in the wave? Well, let me tell you. So Dunkley's already there, who is joined by Cam Rayner, Kai Lohman, and Noah Answorth. Chad Warner is next to Noah Answorth. Matty Roberts is goal side. So it's 5 on 3 with a minute and a half to go when you're 40 points down. Now, Noah Answorth does something extremely clever here. Nudges Chad Warner into the pack. So Warner's now effectively out of the equation. All Dunkley has to do is win a one-on-one on the ground against Robbie Fox, which he does. And that's not me disparaging Robbie, by the way. He was Sydney's best player in that second quarter, and it was not close. And I thought he was one of the Sydney players that could hold his head up after his performance. So that's not disparaging him at all. So Answorth eventually gets the footy. As I've said, Lohman and Rayner are there until Noah hears the voice behind him. And it's Lachie Neale. So we're now at a 6v3 at centre half forward. Are you kidding me? And then all Lockie's got to do is spin, 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 kick the ball inboard. Logan Morris takes the mark, kicks the goal, 46 points, game over. So, there's your second quarter. There's how Brisbane sunk the Swans in that quarter. And to the Brisbane fans, I've got quite a few that watch on the channel. Congratulations. Nothing's better than this. You deserve to arrogantly enjoy this for as long as you want. Don't treat other people like assholes, but arrogantly enjoy it. Because it's so good. And I would argue, no team this year deserved it more. They finished 5th. Wiped Carlton. Kicked the first 10 or 9 on them. 9 goals, 6-0. The amazing comeback against the Giants. The amazing comeback against the Cats. They were on the road 3 times at a neutral venue. And they made it theirs. And Sydney, I'll do a what's next for Sydney video next week. Because I do want to do another draft video on Wednesday. So that'll be coming out. But if I could ask a favour of the non-Brisbane fans, make the conversation more about the winners. Because what they were able to do was extraordinary. That's all I'm asking. So if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. Let me know if you think the intro going is a good or a bad thing, and I'll see what I can do about it. Some pretty exciting announcements are to come, guys, so if you're not subscribed, do so, because the community tab is where you're going to be able to keep up to date with everything. Some more polls and quizzes will be coming out, not daily, but they were really fun, and you guys seem to engage with them quite a bit, so I appreciate that. Look after yourselves. Look after each other, because if you don't, you're in trouble. And if it's your birthday today, happy birthday. See you guys.